Discovered my wife. Was bored with me and called her ex. Came in XXX, so in front of her parents. My birthday gift to her was a video of them having EX. The air hung thick with anticipation, the scent of vanilla cake and simmering resentment. It was my wife, Jessica's, 30th birthday, a milestone she'd been planning for months, a carefully orchestrated extravaganza designed to showcase her impeccable taste and enviable lifestyle. But as I surveyed the scene, our meticulously decorated backyard, the throng of well-wishers, Jessica resplendent in a designer dress that probably cost more than my car, a cold dread settled in my stomach. The past year had been difficult, to put it mildly. The easy laughter, the stolen kisses, the late-night talks that had once defined our relationship had been replaced by a strained silence, a polite distance that spoke volumes. I wasn't blind. I'd noticed the way her eyes glazed over during my attempts at conversation, the way her body stiffened when I reached for her hand, the way her phone seemed permanently glued to her hand, her attention always focused on someone, something, anywhere but on me. "Is everything okay, Jess?" I'd asked, my voice hesitant, my heart pounding with a dread I couldn't quite articulate.
Of course, honey.
She'd reply, her smile a practiced mask that didn't quite reach her eyes.
Just a bit stressed with work, you know how it is.
But I didn't know. I was a simple guy, a carpenter by trade, my hands more comfortable with wood and nails than the intricacies of corporate ladder climbing and social media posturing. My world revolved around building things, furniture, homes, a life with the woman I loved. Jessica, with her high-powered job at a fashion magazine and her insatiable appetite for the latest trends, seemed to inhabit a different universe, one where appearances mattered more than substance, where validation came from likes and followers rather than genuine connection. The change in her had been gradual, a subtle erosion of the woman I'd fallen in love with. The girl who loved my calloused hands, who'd found joy in our quiet evenings spent reading books and watching old movies, had been replaced by someone who seemed perpetually dissatisfied, her gaze constantly seeking something, someone beyond the confines of our life together. The confirmation, when it arrived, was a gut punch delivered via a forgotten phone left carelessly on the kitchen counter. A text message flashed across the screen, the sender's name sending a wave of nausea through me.
"Can't wait to see you tonight. Been thinking about you all day. He'll never satisfy you the way I can."
The words, stark and explicit, burned themselves into my brain. It wasn't just the infidelity, the casual cruelty of her betrayal. It was the implication that I was somehow inadequate, a pale imitation of the man she truly desired. My initial reaction was a primal scream of rage, a desire to smash the phone, the house, everything that reminded me of her, of the life we'd built together. But then, a cold, calculating calm settled over me. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic confrontation. I wouldn't beg, wouldn't plead, wouldn't let her see the depth of my pain. Instead, I did something that, in hindsight, was probably fueled by a mixture of heartbreak and a twisted sense of justice. I installed a hidden camera in our bedroom. The footage, captured a few nights later, confirmed my worst fears. Jessica, her face flushed with a passion I hadn't witnessed in years, was in our bed, her body entangled with her ex-boyfriend, a slick lawyer named Daniel, the man she'd sworn she'd never loved, the man she'd supposedly left behind for a simpler life with me. I watched the video, each frame a searing indictment of her betrayal, the sound of their laughter, their moans, a soundtrack to my shattered world. And then an idea, as cold and sharp as a shard of glass, took root in my mind. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I'd let her bask in the glow of her meticulously planned birthday celebration, surrounded by her friends, her family, oblivious to the truth that simmered beneath the surface. And then I'd deliver my gift. The moment arrived. The cake had been cut, the toasts made, Jessica's face flushed with champagne, and the adulation of her guests. "I have one more surprise for you, darling," I announced, my voice steady, my smile a carefully crafted mask that hid the storm raging within me. I dimmed the lights, the guests murmuring with curiosity. And then the video flickered to life on the large screen we'd rented for the occasion. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Jessica's gasp of horror as she recognized herself, her naked body entwined with Daniel's, their betrayal laid bare for all to see. Her parents, their faces contorted in a mixture of shock and disgust, turned to her, their eyes accusing, their silence a judgment more damning than any words I could utter. The party, once a joyous celebration, dissolved into a chaotic chorus of gasps and whispers. Guests, their faces pale with shock, quickly made their excuses and fled, leaving Jessica standing alone, her carefully crafted facade shattered, the truth of her betrayal exposed. She turned to me, her eyes pleading, her voice a strangled whisper.
Mark, I can explain.
But there were no explanations, no excuses that could justify her actions, her utter disregard for our vows, for my trust. "Happy birthday, Jessica," I said, my voice devoid of emotion, the weight of her betrayal heavier than any gift I could offer. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving her to face the wreckage of her own making. Months later, a letter arrived. It was from Jessica, her carefully crafted script now a shaky scrawl, her words reeking of desperation. She was pregnant, she wrote. Daniel, the man she'd chosen over me, wanted nothing to do with her, with their child. She was alone, scared, and begging for my forgiveness. I read the letter, the words blurring through a film of unshed tears. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memory of the woman I'd loved, ached with a mixture of pity and anger. But the anger had lost its sharp edges, replaced by a weary resignation. She had made her choices, just as I had made mine. And forgiveness, like love, couldn't be forced, couldn't be coerced through guilt or desperation. I didn't reply to her letter. In fact, I tossed it into the fireplace, watching as the flames consumed her pleas, her justifications, her attempts to rewrite a past that couldn't be erased. The act, while petty, felt cathartic, a small measure of control in a world that had spun off its axis. Over the next few months, Jessica appeared at my doorstep numerous times, her face etched with a mix of desperation and regret. Each time, I'd listen patiently, my heart a lead weight in my chest, as she begged for forgiveness, for another chance. She blamed Daniel, claimed he'd manipulated her, that the pregnancy was a mistake. She swore she still loved me, that she'd spend the rest of her life trying to make things right. But her words felt hollow, like a script she'd rehearsed but hadn't truly internalized. I saw the truth in her eyes, a flicker of resentment, a subtle blame that shifted the responsibility for her actions onto me, onto my supposed shortcomings.
I was lonely, Mark.
She'd sob, her carefully applied mascara streaking her cheeks.
You were always so busy with work, with your father. I just needed someone to make me feel seen.
Seen. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd been so focused on curating the perfect image, on seeking validation from the outside world, that she'd failed to see the love, the commitment, the life we'd built together. Each encounter chipped away at my remaining hope, leaving behind a raw, aching void. It was exhausting, this dance of denial and desperation, this charade of remorse that felt more performative than genuine. Finally, I put an end to it. "It's over, Jessica," I said, my voice firm, my gaze steady. "There's nothing left to say. I want a divorce." The legal proceedings were messy, drawn out, a final act of cruelty orchestrated by a woman who, even in defeat, sought to inflict as much pain as possible. The house, our shared dreams, our carefully curated life, it all had to be divided, dissected, reduced to a financial settlement that felt like a slap in the face. The custody arrangements were the hardest. The thought of sharing my son, my precious boy, with the woman who had betrayed me so deeply filled me with a visceral dread. But I knew, deep down, that he deserved a mother, that despite her flaws, Jessica wasn't a monster. We settled on a shared custody agreement, the legal jargon a poor substitute for the harmonious family life we'd once envisioned. The following years were a blur of grief, anger, and the overwhelming responsibility of raising my son alone. There were days when the weight of it all threatened to crush me, when the memories of Jessica's betrayal, of my father's passing, rose up like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me in their undertow. But I kept going. For my son, for the fragile hope that I could still build a life worth living, a life defined not by heartbreak, but by the quiet resilience of the human spirit. I poured myself into work, finding solace in the physicality of carpentry, the satisfaction of creating something tangible, something beautiful, out of raw materials. My son, with his infectious laughter and unwavering love, became my anchor, a constant reminder of the goodness that still existed in the world. Slowly, the sharp edges of my pain softened, replaced by a dull ache that I learned to carry with me, a constant companion, but no longer the sole occupant of my heart. I started venturing out again, tentatively at first, reconnecting with old friends, rediscovering the simple joys of good conversation, shared laughter, and the warmth of human connection. And then I met her, Olivia. She was a painter, her canvases a riot of color and emotion, a reflection of her own vibrant spirit. She listened patiently as I shared my story, her eyes filled with understanding, her silence more comforting than any words of empty consolation. Our connection was slow, organic, built on a foundation of shared values, mutual respect, and a deep appreciation for the beauty and fragility of life. She had her own scars, her own stories of heartbreak and resilience, and in that shared vulnerability, we found a strength, a connection that transcended the pain of our pasts. Olivia loved my son as her own, her warmth and nurturing spirit filling the void that Jessica's betrayal had left behind. She encouraged my passion for carpentry, her artistic sensibility complementing my practical skills, our shared creativity transforming our home into a haven of warmth and laughter. Life wasn't perfect. There were still moments when the shadows of the past threatened to engulf me, when the memories of betrayal and loss resurfaced, their sharp edges catching me off guard. But I had learned to navigate those dark waters, to find solace in the love that surrounded me, in the simple joys of family, of friendship, of a life built not on fleeting passion, but on the enduring strength of genuine connection. And sometimes as I watched Olivia and my son laughing together, their joy a vibrant tapestry against the backdrop of our imperfect lives, I'd think about Jessica, about the choices she'd made, the path she'd chosen. I didn't hate her. I didn't even resent her. I simply felt a profound sadness for the woman who had been so consumed by the pursuit of external validation that she'd failed to recognize the true treasures she already possessed. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about condoning her actions or absolving her of the pain she had caused. It was about releasing the bitterness, the anger, the need for revenge that had once consumed me. It was about choosing peace, about finally letting go of the past so I could fully embrace the future. A future filled with the quiet joy of a life well lived, a life defined not by betrayal, but by love, by resilience, by the simple, beautiful truth that sometimes the greatest happiness comes from starting over.